The steady sound of suitcase wheels echoed across the polished marble floor of the Gran Avalon lobby. Crystal chandeliers cast their light on tailored suits, elegant evening gowns, and handshakes worth millions. Vanessa Cole entered. Her walk was unhurried, understated, a crisp white shirt, tailored trousers, low Louboutin heels, a Cartier watch on her wrist, refined, never boastful. She wasn't someone who needed to show off to be noticed. As she approached the front desk, a commanding voice rang out from behind. "You there, take my luggage up to the presidential suite." Vanessa paused. Gregory Haines, a white man in his 50s, salt and pepper hair combed back, striped shirt, silk tie, looked at her, not like a potential partner, but like a boss eyeing hotel staff. Vanessa blinked once. "I'm sorry, I don't..." She didn't even finish her sentence before a $10 bill was pressed into her hand. Gregory didn't look at her twice. "Do it properly, I don't like delays." No anger, no smile, just silence. Vanessa held the bill, letting her fingers trace the edge of the paper. She could have responded. One sharp line, one move that would humiliate him on the spot. But she didn't. She took his suitcase and walked. Behind her, Gregory noticed nothing, but others had. A few eyes widened. An Asian businessman furrowed his brow. A young female executive tightened her grip on her wine glass. No one spoke, but something in the room shifted. Vanessa headed for the elevator. As the stainless steel doors reflected her image, she smiled, just faintly. Her face had remembered. Floor 45, Gran Avalon, VIP suite. Vanessa sat on a chair, legs crossed, phone in hand. But she wasn't scrolling, wasn't reading texts. She was looking at the guest list for tonight's event. Gregory Haines, Horizon Capital. A curious way to meet, she thought. She set the phone down and poured herself a glass of Evian. Every movement, measured, intentional. 32 years old, CEO and founder of Coltech, an AI tech startup now leading the market. In just 4 years, she had turned a handful of fresh engineers into a company valued near $200 million. No assistant, no name tag, no noise. The only person in this hotel who truly knew who she was her. And that made everything more interesting. The man who mistook her for hotel staff would soon be deciding whether or not to invest in her company. Vanessa took a sip of water, eyes drifting toward the night sky. She had nothing to prove. But one thing was certain. Tonight, Gregory Haines was going to learn a lesson he would never forget. Gran Avalon VIP ballroom. The clink of wine glasses, warm gold light from chandeliers, and the hum of conversations filled the air. The most powerful names in investment were gathered here. People who never needed to introduce themselves. At the center of the room stood Gregory Haines. Impeccable gray suit, a glass of scotch in hand, delivering a speech on authentic leadership. The usual monologue, risk-taking, long-term vision, and above all, spotting the winners in a volatile market. The best leaders, he said, scanning the room, not only work smart, they show up in the right place at the right time. His gaze challenged the crowd, daring anyone to disagree. Then the host's voice broke in, cutting cleanly through the air. "And now please welcome a woman who has redefined what corporate power looks like. Vanessa Cole." Her name dropped like thunder in the ballroom. Gregory's glass trembled. He nearly spilled it. From the far corner, Vanessa emerged, unrushed, unapologetic. Still in her white shirt and tailored pants, no glitter, no noise. But this time, she wasn't the hotel staff Gregory had imagined. She was the one he needed to impress. All eyes followed her as she walked to the stage. Gregory swallowed hard, his face growing hot. Vanessa stepped up, took the mic, and for a brief moment, looked straight at him. Then she smiled, softly, as if they'd never met. Gregory froze. The room fell silent. People around them were wondering, did they just witness something no one dared to name? Vanessa raised her glass. She didn't look at him again. The performance was over, and Gregory knew. Tonight, he had made a mistake he'd never recover from. Gran Avalon, fine dining restaurant, private room. A phone call was made shortly after the gala. Gregory Haines wasn't stupid. He understood the game of power. And most importantly, he knew better than to let his ego get in the way of making money. The next morning, a message arrived in Vanessa's inbox. Dinner tonight? I believe we need to clear up a few misunderstandings. Gregory Haines. Vanessa read it and agreed. 8 p.m., La Verre Restaurant, 48th floor. She arrived on time, dressed in a simple black dress, no excessive jewelry. Gregory was already there, wearing a tight-lipped smile in the eyes of a man who had realized he'd made a mistake. Vanessa, I have to say, I was genuinely impressed last night. She placed her napkin on her lap, saying nothing. Gregory cleared his throat and continued. I think we can put that little misunderstanding in the hotel lobby behind us. I didn't realize who you were. Vanessa slowly lifted her wine glass, swirling it gently, her gaze sharp yet unreadable. Oh? So if I'd been introduced as a CEO from the start, you would have treated me differently? Gregory froze for a beat. No, I didn't mean, what kind of roles do you think black women are suited for? She interrupted. Gregory fumbled. Vanessa set her glass down and leaned back in her chair. Her voice was low, but each word cut with precision. My mother worked as a hotel housekeeper in a place just like this. 30 years, hardworking, quiet, never complained. So tell me, did she deserve to be treated the way you treated me last night? Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, offering a calm, deliberate smile. And if I had taken your suitcase upstairs that night, would you be signing a deal with me today? There was no need for an answer. Silence filled the space. Vanessa lifted her glass once more, but didn't drink. She placed it back on the table, untouched. A silent reminder, this was not a reconciliation. She rose to her feet, pulled a $10 bill from her wallet, and laid it on the table. Do it properly, I don't like delays. The line landed like a blade. Gregory was speechless. Vanessa turned and walked away, leaving behind the fine china, the empty wine glass, and a man drowning in his own shame. Horizon Capital Investment Summit, VIP Boardroom. A day after the tense dinner, Vanessa entered the boardroom of Horizon Capital. Inside were some of the most powerful people in finance, gatekeepers of billions. None of them knew that one of their upcoming decisions would redefine the reputation of their firm. At the center of the table sat Gregory Haines. His face was tense, though he tried to appear composed. He knew this meeting wouldn't be easy, but still thought he had some control left. Vanessa walked in. No assistant, no thick folders, just an iPad in hand. She didn't need to overtalk to prove anything. The chairman opened the meeting, voice measured but sharp. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Cole. As you know, we've reviewed Coltech thoroughly and have a few concerns regarding your leadership strategy. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, then replied calmly. Concerns about strategy or about leadership itself? The chairman hesitated. Then one board member, a white man in his 50s, silver hair, navy tie, jumped in. We just don't believe in your long-term vision. Vanessa didn't blink. My vision or my image? Silence, but not the kind that meant respect. It was the kind where people weighed whether they dared to say what they really thought. And then came the mistake. A different board member, growing impatient, glanced at Gregory, then muttered, "We just don't want to back someone who doesn't fit the traditional model of leadership." Vanessa's lips curved, just slightly. She placed the iPad on the table, swiped her finger. An email appeared on the screen. An internal message from Horizon Capital. One sentence stood out, clear and damning. I don't do business with black women who look like hotel staff. Shock rippled through the room. The chairman went rigid. The man who just spoken turned pale. Gregory clenched his fists. His jaw tightened. Fascinating, isn't it? Vanessa said softly. Not angry, not loud, but with a chill that cut deep. The question isn't whether Coltech has leadership potential. The real question is, does Horizon Capital have what it takes not to destroy its own reputation? No one spoke. Vanessa stood up, adjusted the collar of her shirt, slid her iPad back into her bag. We don't need your capital, but be careful. The cost of prejudice often outweighs the price of any deal. She walked out of the room, and Gregory knew the real storm was just beginning. 12 hours later, front page of Forbes Tech and the Wall Street Journal, a leaked email. A hashtag went viral on Twitter. Number sign Power Unmasked, an article made headlines titled Horizon Capital and the Bias Beneath, when power becomes a barrier instead of a launch pad. Vanessa didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She simply let the truth speak for itself. Horizon Capital instantly became the center of public backlash. Investors started asking questions. Major clients pulled out. Shares dropped 15% before noon. Vanessa, she remained silent. No rebuttal, no demand for apology. She let the world see, unfiltered, the true face of those who once misjudged her. That afternoon, a crowd of reporters waited in the lobby of the Gran Avalon, hoping for a statement. When she stepped out, she paused briefly, offered a soft smile, and said only, "I've learned a lot from silence." That single sentence became the most quoted line on social media for the next 24 hours. At Horizon Capital's offices, Gregory Haines sat alone in a boardroom, staring at a Bloomberg screen as the stock graph plunged downward. He wasn't fired, at least not yet, but he knew his career would never be the same again. Vanessa didn't need to shout. She only needed timing and precision to let others feel the shame of having underestimated her. That was real power. 48 hours after the leak, the story exploded across every major media outlet. What started as a niche scandal in the finance world had become a systemic reckoning. CNN, BBC, Bloomberg, TechCrunch, all carried the same headline. Horizon Capital and the discrimination scandal. Is an investment empire crumbling? But the most devastating blow didn't come from the press. It came from the markets. Horizon Capital was a firm built on trust. And when that trust vanished, panic followed. Within 24 hours, two major tech conglomerates canceled partnerships with Horizon. A prominent health tech startup rejected a $75 million offer simply to avoid association. 3 individual investors pulled out. Horizon's stock fell another 12%, bringing total losses to 27% in 2 days. Inside their offices, Gregory sat frozen in front of a screen streaming endless headlines. "This is a nightmare," a board member muttered. "How much have we lost?" A dry voice answered, "Close to $400 million in market value." Gregory said nothing. Cold sweat gathered on his temples. He had once believed this would blow over, but now he was standing on a sinking ship. And Vanessa, still no interviews, no Twitter threads, no rebuttal videos. Just one calculated move, her quiet appearance at a small tech summit for startups, where she unveiled a new AI feature from Coltech. When a journalist pushed through the crowd and asked about Horizon Capital, she simply smiled and replied, "I think Horizon has more to reflect on than I do." That one line became one of the most reshared quotes of the week. Horizon Capital needed a way out, but only one option remained, an apology. And the only person who could give it was Gregory Haines. Coltech headquarters, CEO's office. 3 afternoons after the scandal, a meeting was requested. Gregory Haines wanted to see Vanessa Cole. She had already expected it. When he entered the office, he was no longer the commanding figure in a luxury suit from Gran Avalon. He looked tired, drained, like a man who hadn't slept in days. Vanessa remained calm. "Have a seat." Gregory pulled out the chair, hesitating slightly before he spoke. I've lost my executive role at Horizon." She tilted her head, waiting. "They needed someone to blame, and I was the most convenient." Still, she said nothing. "I want to make it right," he added, voice rasping. "I want to mentor women-led startups, help them raise capital, build strategy." Vanessa leaned back in her chair, eyes watching him carefully. "Because you regret what you did? Or because you lost your position?" The question cut to the bone. Gregory tensed, eyes dropping to his hands. Silence. Then, for the first time in his life, he exhaled truth. "Both." Another pause. Vanessa studied him a moment longer. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out a business card, and placed it gently on the table in front of him. "This is the address of a nonprofit that supports young women entrepreneurs." Gregory looked up, surprised. "They're looking for a financial advisor. No salary, no spotlight. If you truly want to make things right, go there. If they accept you, I'll consider giving you a chance." Gregory stared at the card on the table. In the past, he never imagined this, from the one who gave orders to the one seeking acceptance. Gregory stood, took the business card, and looked at Vanessa one last time. "I understand." She gave a small nod but said nothing. As the door closed quietly behind him, Vanessa turned the pen in her fingers, her gaze drifting toward the window. She knew, from this moment forward, Gregory Haines would never forget the lesson. No screaming, no vengeance, just letting someone see their true reflection in the mirror. That was the most elegant punishment of all. Cole Tech headquarters, 3 weeks after the Horizon scandal. The world had already moved on. The media frenzy surrounding Horizon Capital had cooled, replaced by the next financial controversy. News outlets stopped mentioning Gregory Haines. He had vanished from the spotlight like so many disgraced men before him. Cole Tech, on the other hand, had nothing to recover from because it had never stumbled in the first place. Vanessa Cole continued doing what she did best, focusing on the product. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number from Los Angeles. She disliked unplanned calls, but she answered anyway. "Vanessa Cole," a warm, steady voice replied on the other end. "Hello, this is Jordan Matthews, director at Warner Studios." Vanessa leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing just slightly. "I just read the Forbes piece on you," Jordan continued, "and I have to say, this isn't just a business story, it's a film." She stayed silent for a beat. Jordan took the cue and pressed forward. A black female CEO, underestimated by the elite, taking down a silent system of bias. If I read that as a script, I'd say it was too good to be true. Vanessa smiled faintly, just as she expected. Hollywood had always been obsessed with underdog stories. A black woman toppling a billion-dollar fund? Too perfect a package to resist. "What do you think?" Jordan asked. "Netflix is very interested in this project." Vanessa traced a finger along the edge of the wooden desk. She could picture the film already. The slow-motion shots, Gregory shoving a $10 bill into her hand, her sliding that damning email across the Horizon boardroom table, the stock crash blinking on the Bloomberg screen. Scenes full of tension, emotion, and unspoken politics. She knew it would inspire people, but it wasn't the story she wanted to tell. "I understand why you want to make this movie," Vanessa said, voice steady and low. Jordan inhaled with anticipation. "Great. Then maybe we can set up, but I don't want to be famous for something that never should have happened." Jordan paused. Vanessa continued, voice calm but final. "I don't want to be remembered for a scandal. I want to be remembered for the technology I built." A long silence followed. Jordan considered saying more but stopped himself. He realized, in this negotiation, he wasn't the one in control. "I understand," he finally said. "Best of luck to you." Vanessa nodded. She didn't need luck. She had a plan. The call ended. She set the phone down and didn't think about it again. Because while the world was busy retelling the past, she was already writing the next chapter. International Tech Conference, Singapore. Vanessa Cole stepped onto the stage, not as a victim of discrimination, not as a woman of color who turned the tables. She stood there for one reason only, to present the technology of Cole Tech. In front of her, over 5,000 attendees, top investors, chief executive officers of major tech corporations, young startup founders seeking a spark of inspiration. Behind her, a massive LED screen displayed a single line: Cole Tech, the future of artificial intelligence in enterprise. No one mentioned Horizon Capital. No one asked about Gregory Haines. And that was exactly how Vanessa wanted it. She didn't want to be defined by a scandal. She didn't need public sympathy. She only wanted to be seen for what she had truly built. She began her keynote with a single question: how can artificial intelligence not only transform business, but also change the way we see ourselves? She didn't talk about herself. She didn't mention the battle she'd already won. She spoke about the future, and the room was spellbound. 45 minutes later, she ended her talk. As she bowed her head slightly, the entire hall rose in applause, but not out of pity, out of respect. She stepped off stage. A stream of investors approached, eager to discuss the next funding round. Coltech had just crossed a major milestone, an additional $250 million in successful fundraising. With this new capital, Coltech was set to expand across Europe and Asia. No longer just a startup, they were becoming a tech giant. Vanessa shook hands with a Japanese investor and offered a polite nod. Everything was falling into place. But as she stepped out of the conference hall, a young reporter blocked her path. "Ms. Cole, just one quick question. Do you have anything to say to Gregory Haines?" Vanessa stopped. She looked the reporter in the eye. A beat of silence. Then she smiled softly, but said nothing. She turned and walked away. The reporter blinked, confused. No statement, no sharp comeback. And yet, that made the story hit even harder, because true power doesn't need to be declared. It simply needs to be felt. On social media, the hashtag number Power Unmasked had faded. Now the most talked about name wasn't Horizon Capital, it was Coltech and Vanessa Cole. No longer underestimated, no longer defined by a scandal, but seen, undeniably, as a leader in a league of her own. A small cafe in New York, 3 months later. Gregory Haines sat alone. A financial newspaper lay open on the table before him. Front page, a large photo in the center. Vanessa Cole, shaking hands with a Japanese tech CEO. The headline read, "Coltech, once undervalued, now $1 billion force in AI." Gregory stared at the article. 3 months ago, he had still believed he had a chance. 3 months ago, he had tried to make amends. But now he saw the truth. The world had moved forward, and he had been left behind. His phone buzzed, an email from Horizon Capital. The subject line was short. "We are formally severing all ties with you." He'd known it would come, but seeing it in print still left him hollow. No job, no influence. No more firm handshakes from the financial elite he once thought were forever. Gregory lifted his coffee cup, but didn't drink. His mind wandered back to that day in Vanessa's office. "Do you regret what you did or just losing your seat?" That question still haunted him, and now he knew the answer. It had never been about remorse. He clenched his fist, then slowly released it. For the first time in his life, Gregory Haines was no longer the man giving the orders. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Singapore Vanessa Cole stood on the rooftop of the Coltech office tower. The night breeze brushed gently against her. She stood still, overlooking the city glowing beneath her. In 3 months, she had done everything she set out to do. No apologies requested, no tell-all interviews, just one path: forward. A message arrived from her media team. "Press is asking if you'd like to comment on Gregory Haines' complete downfall." Vanessa read it. Her finger hovered. Then she pressed delete. No statement, no reaction. Because real power doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need flashy revenge. It only requires that others feel the shame of having misjudged you. Vanessa Cole didn't change the world with a fiery speech. She didn't change it with outrage. She changed it with precision, with silence delivered at the perfect moment, with a presence so undeniable, the world could no longer look away. She turned back toward her office, where an entire tech empire was waiting for her to lead. Gregory Haines had been forgotten. Horizon Capital would eventually be replaced. But Vanessa Cole? She was still here, still the enigma, still the force no one would ever underestimate again.